Hello and welcome to Sew Tabby. On this episode, I'll be showing you how to make a sock monkey. This sock monkey is made with a child's striped sock. Overall, it took me about 2 hours, but I did use a machine to sew part of it. If you hand stitch the whole thing, it will take you a little bit longer. So let's get started. Step 1 is choosing the socks. So when you choose your socks, you want to have the heels to have a different color because that's going to be your snout and the monkey's bottom. But you also want it to be able to at least fold over on itself. So the toes are going to be at least as long as the ankles or shorter than the ankles, because your ankles are going to be your feet and your arms. So if you have shorter socks, you're going to have little stubby arms and legs. You can do knee highs, which is quite a bit longer. You can either make those really long arms and legs, or you can usually, if it folds over on itself in half on the ankle and can still fit the foot and the toes, then you can make your arms here and your legs here, and then you can make a really long tail with the other sock, and then you'll have some left over. You can also do baby socks. Their ankles tend to be a little bit shorter, so when it folds over, it's not quite to where you'd want it to be, but you can open those up. You can take out that seam right there, and it extends it a little bit, and you can make those into legs and arms. Baby socks make really cute ornaments, Christmas ornaments, or in a wreath or something. This one's a Halloween sock, so you can make a little decorative Halloween monkey. If you do choose pattern socks, just keep in mind that your legs are going to be upside down. The arms, when you cut them, you can actually flip those so you can make the arms whichever way you want it to be. So you can have the pattern going the correct direction on pattern socks. So I start with my socks inside out. And then I tend to seam rip this little seam right here because it gives you a little bit extra. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and seam rip that. Be careful not to make a hole on the outer part of the sock. Now, if you make a hole, sometimes you can work around it when making the arms. So if you make a hole, say here, you just make sure that was your middle when you sew your arms. But I always start with the body and the legs first. So you're going to fold your sock still inside out. So the heel is sticking straight up. And then you're going to sew one leg and then two leg. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over to the machine. At my machine, I'm just going to slide that under. So I tend to run the edge of my foot along the fold, which is usually middle. Bring that up to that top stripe there, so you see my needles lined up with that top stripe. You're also going to want to make sure that your the coloring that you're using to sew with matches somewhat the colors that your sock is. I'm using a gray. This is a white and a black. You could use white, you could use black. Let me go ahead and start. You're going to stretch the sock as you sew, because if you have little ones playing with it, they'll stretch it for you and pop your seams. Okay, so then when we come to here, we're going to try to bend this around and make a curved foot. I tend to just fold the fabric, and the machine tends to do the walking. Reverse a little bit and walk that down. Okay, so we've got one leg sewn. Now we're going to go ahead and come over and line this up. Again, my needle is with that first line, and then the edge is going to run right along that crease. I don't know if you can see the crease as I'm sewing. Go ahead and put my needle down. But as I stretch it, you can still kind of see where the crease is. It may not show up on camera. Go ahead and sew this one. Remember to stretch. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the curve. And lock it down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the next one. Okay, now that we've sewn the legs, we can cut it apart. Be really careful not to cut too close to your seam. You want to be in the direct center, which should be your fold line. Just go ahead and cut. And don't cut all the way to the top. You probably want to cut, I started sewing on the black line. You probably only want to cut to that white line. And you should have a little hole right there, and you can, right there in the crotch, and you can go ahead and push the fabric through. Pull it through. There's one leg. There's two legs. And then when you pull on that, it gives a little bit. My daughter's 9 and she finds the breaking point to all of her sock monkeys. I've had to stitch every limb on all of her sock monkeys at least once. But they're well loved and they're well played with. So there is the body, and we're ready to move on to the next step. So for the next step, I usually leave the sock flat. So you've got your heel over here, you've got the toes and the ankle right here. If you had a hole, say, you know, on this part, you could always open that up and and sew your arms, because this right here is going to be your arms. You'll sew them just like the legs. This is going to be the mouth. And then I cut right there at the seam on the toes. And open that up, because that will give me my tail. Then I'll sew around and make a tail there. And then your ears are going to be 2 up or sideways C's. So it's going to just be a little lump there and a little lump there. So I'm going to go ahead and take that to machine and show you how to do that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with the arms. Here you want to bring it down to, you see there's the black stripe, the white stripe. You probably want to start it right there at the second black stripe. And then you probably want to find center. And then you're going to run it right center along the edge. Okay, remember to stretch. Arm. Then again, there's the one stripe, the white stripe, and then that second black stripe I'm going to go ahead and start on. And I'm going to stretch my fabric. On this one I went ahead and flipped it upside down, so I'm running on the same side of my machine along that center. Feel free to draw that center line actually on, because you're cutting that part out too, so you won't have to actually, you know, live with, if you use permanent marker, and live with that showing through. Down. Okay, so the arms are done. Let's go ahead and do the tail. So that one I'm going to go ahead and start on that first white line. Started it right there on that first white line, so there's the black line and then the white line. And then you want to leave about a centimeter. It's about touching the 3/4 inch on my machine right there. You know, the wider you go, the fatter the tail is going to be. If you like real narrow tails, you can make that smaller. And you're just going to go ahead and follow that. I'm going to go ahead and just go with the curve in the sock. And then that last little bit, remember you're going to need to do a curve at the end for the tail tip. Okay. The last part before I cut the pieces out are the ears. So with the stripe socks, you can see how big you want the ears. We can probably go from one black stripe over this stripe and then come back down on the other black stripe and then start it again for the next one. I can't do a pattern because every sock, depending on what size you get, would be a different sized ear. But it's just a drawing a little C with your machine, or sideways C. And then that next ear. And that is most of the machine part. The only thing we do is the inside of the ears, but let's cut this out first. Okay, so I took it over to the scissors, and so it was like this. And I went ahead and cut out along that black line on the sock. And then I have the mouth. These for the arms. Of course, cut the best you can in the center. And turn them inside out. One arm. Two arms. Cut out the tail, leaving a little bit of seam. A little bit next to your seam. And then go ahead and cut out the ears. Just going around that seam. If you have leftovers, you can just go ahead and toss those. On the tail, go ahead and turn that inside out. And the same construction goes if you're hand sewing it. You just hand sew instead of machine sew it with the same pattern. There's your tail. Okay, then on the ears, you notice they were sewn on the fold. So to fold them inside out, you have to, I just take a little seam ripper and just take a little bit and rip a hole. Pull it through. Punch it out so you have an ear. And then on the second one, again, that was, took a seam ripper right there to the center, just a little bit, you can see, make a hole, and then you can Pull that right through. And then we'll actually take these back over to the machine because you're gonna sew or hand sew a stitch right around here, and that kind of pinches it down to give it an ear shape. Okay, back in the machine. Drop my foot. And I'm just following, you can fill inside of this the excess past the seam. And I kind of use that as a guide and try to let my needle follow that. So instead of stuffing, you're just going to use the socks, regular excess, as your outer portion of the ear. And again, the second one. Just following that. Right there. So you can see that seam went around there, so you've got an outer and inner part of the ear. Just gives a little bit more dimension for your sock monkey. And I always start stuffing the body first because everything attaches to the body. So, and I always start with the legs. Of course, push it all the way down to the bottom. If you get a pucker, you know, you can always just roll it and try to pinch it out. And kind of smashes it down so your leg's a little less lumpy. Of course, that was 2 pieces, so I'm trying to mash them together and then roll them together. So you got one leg, and then go ahead and do the second leg. And then the reason why you only cut leaving an extra little bit there is you see it folds over on itself. So when you sew that, it's going to be a lot easier to sew because you didn't cut right up to where the seam was. And then of course make sure you make your legs somewhat close to the same width. As close as you can get them with the stuffing. they're about the same width. And then we're going to start filling. And if you tuck it in between the, you can feel when you're making it the edge of the stuffing for the leg, and then up here, you just kind of tuck it in there. Really helps fill out your monkey, and then we'll make it so it sits better. So that's got a nice full bottom. And then all you need to do to finish up the body, it would be to go ahead and sew up the hole. So to do that, just a regular hand sewing needle. And then I'm going to go ahead and use white thread. Thread my needle. And I'll sew the hole together. So then I'm just running my needle through. And because we didn't cut all the way up to our seam, we've got this nice fold, so I'm just taking a little bit of white and then running it to the white on this side and pulling through. And go ahead and tie it off. And then I'm going to hide my threads actually right there in the monkey. And then you just kind of pull, they hide right back into the monkey. Go ahead and start the snout. So here's the snout. You can trim this piece off if you want. I don't. It adds more in here, so that's less fluff you have to use. So you want to go ahead and fold it over so you have just the white showing, and then I always start somewhere around the top, not quite at the middle, because that's where I end up stuffing it. So I'll start about there. Go ahead and tie that. Okay. course, now that I've tied it, I'm going to have to refold it. So, and kind of position it where you want it to be. For a little bit. And the nice thing with the striped socks is because the pattern is relatively even, instead of, you know, just random things over the sock, you can actually line it up with your stripes. So if, you know, I want my snout to be here, I'm going to have it at the bottom of the second black stripe. You know, when you get to here, you can line up that side to the bottom of the second black stripe. So go ahead and try to sew that. And then, of course, I'm using that line right here for the top of the snout, but just about ready to put some stuffing in. And I usually find this when I do my last stitch, run it through that loop, and it kind of holds it in place so it doesn't pull up while you're stuffing. Just go ahead and put the stuffing in, stuff it to one side and then to the other. Kind of look at it, you know, does it need more on one side or the other? Am I lopsided? Right there. It looks like a cute snout. So, and my needle's still attached, so I can just continue sewing that, kind of pinching it together. I'm grabbing that. We're going to tie it off. Just regular knot, and then hide the seam, or we're going to hide the thread. Push it right through. And your monkey has a nose now. Okay. So if you see on the top, there's that seam across the toes. Well, when it comes to about here is the end, I like to line it up with that as long as that seam is even, and it gives me something to line up with on either side of the ears. So then I'll go from there to probably try to pull this to the bottom of that first stripe, and then the same on this side. Of course, our arms aren't stuffed yet, so we still need to stuff those. Sit. Again, we're going to go ahead and audition to see how far down we want the arms. So it looks like right at the top of that white line right there. Looks pretty nice to the bottom of the next white line. So I tend to fold in a little bit of the top, so then it makes it a nice smooth area to try to sew on. And be mindful of where your seam is. You want that one, or the seam, to face down. So I always go, so there's your seam. So then this would be the top of the arm. the last piece that we need to put on is the tail. If you like a small tail, you don't have to stuff it. I don't like to stuff mine a lot, just enough to give it a little bit of body. Tails are a little bit harder to stuff because they're so small. We'll look for the seam because that's going to be your bottom. And then attach your thread to the top. And then you want it in the middle of the bottom. And in the middle of the arms too. I use black yarn. The eyes up a little bit higher because you've got the black right here, but this is white, so that'll be easy enough to make the nose and the smile. Front, just kind of hoop it around. And tie it. First eye is always the easiest, just like the arms and the ears. It's the second eye making it symmetrical and in the right location. You want to find the right spot. Just go a little bit out from the eye. And an eyelash. It's almost like a sunburst around the eye. And then one more on this side. I always like to start on the side of the eye, so when I come back down, I'm going to come around here. And I'm going to take a moment and just hide that string real quick. Four, and then this next eyelash is going to be the last one. Okay. Then from there, I'm going to go ahead and do the nose. I'm going to just come right up a little bit off from the center. I'm going to come down and make, and then back up a little bit off center on the other side. And then back down so it makes a V. And then I'm going to put the needle on the far side to make the smile. So there's the little nose. And then of course you're going to do a little smile around here, about there to there. And then for running stitch, you got it out. So I'm just going to go in, but come back up about halfway. Again, I'm going to go a little bit and then come back up right about where the yarn is. Just about to the end. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to tie it. I'm just going to come back through this loop, pull that loop taut, and then come back through that loop. It makes a nice little knot right there. And then just slip that through someplace and make it come back through the back somewhere. Of course, cut the thread and then pull it a little bit, and that comes right back out. And you have your very own sock monkey. I do sell the sock monkeys on Etsy. I will have my Etsy shop listed in the comments if you wish to take a look. Yeah, that is a sock monkey. Felt for the eyes. That's just felt. And then I attached a Batman patch to his belly. Superman. It's a Chanel sock. They're a little bit harder to work with. Attached a patch to his belly and then just a little cape in the back. And that's just made out of a t-shirt. Just cut a little triangle, folded it, and then you can change the shape of the ears, like I was talking about, and make it a cat. You know, position them up higher, make them pointy, and you've got a cute little cat again in Chanel. And it's a baby sock, so it's a little Christmas ornament.